YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, drop your comments down below, share the video with anyone that you think might be interested. And for those listening on Spotify, Apple, or any of the audio-only platforms, please follow, give us a 5-star review. All that stuff helps with the algorithms and getting the podcast out to more and more people. So it's much appreciated. But let's get into that's enough on United. It wasn't a big enough game to keep going much longer. Let's go on to the last segment of the pod then for this week, and we'll do a special segment on Amorim and his predicted 11. So the way we've done this is we're expecting, right, guys? I'm going to confirm this with you now. He's going to play his 3-4-3 formation, right? Like from what I've heard him say as well, he said he's going to go with what he knows. So we can only assume he's going to do a 3-4-3. So we'll say who we think from this United squad is gonna fit into those positions. So obviously got goalkeeper, left centre back, right centre back, left wing, two centre mids, a left wing, or did I say that already? Right wing, either way. Two cams, and then a centre forward. So we'll start with the goalie because this one should be nice and easy. Who do you reckon is going to be? I'll start with you, Ed. Who do you reckon is going to be the goalie under Amorim? Are you going to go for Bayindir or Tom Heaton? What are you saying?
I think that's quite an easy one, right? So yeah, Anana's going to sit in there for you guys. That's a fairly easy question. Should get some good form under Amorim potentially. Hasn't performed as well as he probably could have done for United.
He's been decent this season, though, I will say, and I'm an Onana skeptic. I don't love him as a goalie. We mentioned him earlier in the Sanchez Bozo goalie section earlier in the pod. He's definitely in there. So question marks, but yeah, he should be the goalie, right? Johnson, this is an easy one. We've all gone Onana, surely, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's go left centre back then. I'll start with you this time, Johnson. Who do you think is going to slot in that left centre back?
I think it's got to be Lissandro. Left footer. Makes sense. Gets a bit more width to the kind of the three centre-backs. And I think you need a slightly taller centre-back in the middle. So I'm going to go Lissandro on the left.
All right, let's do this as a defensive line, because otherwise I think one by one we'll end up all repeating each other. So who have you got centre-back and right centre-back then, Johns? You've got Lissandro left. Who's centre-back and right centre-back?
Okay, so I've got De Ligt in the middle. And then I'm actually thinking that they're going to have to stick Jonty Evans on the right. And I think obviously because he's slow and everything, but he's experienced. And I think in a back three, or a back five technically, like the speed is going to be less of an issue. I'm assuming they're going to put someone rapid next to him on the right hand side. So I'm going to assume the fact that he's old and slow ain't going to make that much of a difference in a back three. So I'll go Jonty Evans. Maybe you know what? I'll stick Jonty Evans in the middle, and then have De Ligt on the right hand side. Maybe protect him a bit more, and not have him kind of having to deal with people running over the top or something. So, yeah, I'll go Lissandro on the left, Jonty Evans in the middle, and then De Ligt on the right hand side.
All right, what about you, Ed? Are you going to go the same? Are you bringing back Jonty Evans?
Yeah, I don't know really. Have you got 3 high quality centre backs at United, or is that something they need to answer in the recruitment? In general,
I actually think
like is Harry Maguire going to be the one to come back in? In a back three, you like Jonty said, the pace of Evans can be covered up a little bit more. Alessandro Martinez needs to be in there. De Ligt is obviously coming for a decent transfer. So those two, and then who's the third is the question. Yeah, do they stick with Evans and use the back three to cover up any pace that he might have lost?
Do you reckon Lindelof has a shout?
I don't know, because the thing is, to answer Ed's earlier thing, I think centre-back area is the one area we probably don't need to mess around with too much in recruitment. We've got like 8 centre-backs. We've got loads. So we've got more than enough to cover. And I actually feel like the quality issue there is not going to be a massive one because of the position changes. And I think having 3 centre-backs will bring the best out of, or you'll get to see better of Lissandro, De Ligt, and I've gone for Yoro at right centre-back. Because I feel like the left centre-back and right centre-back need to have a bit more pace to cover the space. Because I actually think the wingers that he's going to play, if he goes for this 3-4-3, sorry. I sound like Todd Bowley then. you're going to need to have, real defensive coverage in the left centre back and right centre back space. So I think.
So we're including players that are injured.
No, he's back in training. He's probably going to play when we come
okay.
back from the international break. Yeah, Euro's back. They've been
All
doing
right.
that whole social media buzz around Euro as well, touching the training ground. So yeah, I'm expecting Euro to come into that space. I do agree. Lindelof is a good shout because he's one of the only other centre backs that we have that have a bit of pace. Because once you get past Euro and Lissandro, and even De Ligt, I could say, has probably got just about enough pace. All the like Evans, Maguire, or they could only pretty much play, I think, in the centre back space because of their lack of pace. And Lindelof is probably the only one that I think can come in. He's not rapid, but he's got more pace than Maguire, and he's more agile than Jonty Evans, who could probably come in. Maybe he's a shout. You've seen him a bit under Ruud, so maybe it's a Lindelof remontada at centre back. Who knows? But yeah, I'm pretty much similar to you guys, but I would definitely put Euro in the right centre back space because he's back from injury and he's got some pace to cover it. Let's go left wing then. Let's do left wing and right wing. Ed, who do you think is going to play? Because this might be the most controversial one, right? Because we don't necessarily play with traditional wingers. Certainly not in a 3-4-3. But who do you think is going to play left and right wing?
Yeah, I think this is hard to predict really because in this system, I think the wingers need to offer more defensive cover, right, than they would traditionally. So, is Rashford going to cover his opposition winger in out of possession? So I think to judge them going forwards, I think Garnacho has got to be your guy on the one side, and Rashford is probably your man for the other side, but it's coming to that story with Rashford now of is he the man to do it going forward for United? Diallo is another good shout. Obviously, scored 2 for you guys in the week, right?
Europa,
yeah. Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. It's it depends on how much Amorim thinks he can trust them with the defensive responsibility as well, because a lot of the players good going forwards, but do they offer that defensive cover?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and I would argue with some of those players this season they haven't been good going forward either. So yeah, this is probably the position where we're going to get the most variation, I think, in our answers, because so basically you said Garnacho and
Rashford,
potentially Rashford, right? What do you think, John's left and right wing?
I think he's going to want to put a left footer on the left side because I think he wants width. So I don't think you're going to see people like cutting in necessarily. I don't think you're going to put like a right foot on the left side and a left foot on the right side. So I think, I honestly think if like Shaw comes back, I think he's good to be the kind of left wing back position. I don't think it necessarily has to be a winger. I think he can play enough going up and down. The issue that you've obviously got is that he's just mad injury prone. So I'm not necessarily sure about him. I definitely don't think Ahmad will play on either of the wing back positions. I don't think he's got enough of an engine going backwards and forwards, or like enough physicality, in my opinion, to really shine in that position. I think he's more kind of a shoe-in for one of the 10s maybe. So I'm going to go for Luke Shaw because I think he's coming back now, right? So technically he could maybe get in there. And if it's not him, then I actually reckon that Antony might have a remontada at the left wing back position because he's an engine. He's proven that he's probably he's been better defensively for you than he has been attacking. And I think obviously he's Brazilian, so he speaks Portuguese. There might be easier way to communicate between him and Amorim. Obviously, I know Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese are not exactly the same, but I think they'll be able to communicate enough. So you could see that. And also the fact that you spent so much money on him, you've got to try and get something out of him. And it's clear that he hasn't been favoured under the previous leadership. So maybe Amorim might put a bit more faith in him. So I'm going to go Luke Shaw. And then if he's injured, then I reckon Antony might get a cheeky little shout.
What about right wing then?
I think it's got to be Garnacho. It's got to be Garnacho.
All right, it's interesting then. So you've got a little bit of overlap between yours two. I think you guys are forgetting about Mazraoui and Dalot. and I think Mazraoui will definitely cover one of these positions. I'm not sure if it will be left or right wing, because he's got the engine to cover the space. And you've seen when Ten Hag was losing his mind and playing him at cam, he can also offer some creativity going forward. So I'm going to put Mazraoui at right wing, and then the one thing I am going to agree with you guys on is Garnacho. I think he's going to go on the left wing. So the only thing I will say is watching, and I haven't watched Sporting extensively, like I've admitted over the last couple of weeks, but watching them in the Champions League recently, he doesn't stick to purely like a left footer on the left side and a right footer on the right side. They played that young lad Quenda on the right wing, and he's left footed. He was cutting in quite a lot against City, and to be honest, he ripped them to shreds. So I think there's some flexibility there to play other, the players who with not a preferred left foot on the left wing and preferred right foot on the right wing. So I'm going to go Garnacho on the left wing. I agree. I think he's got the engine, and I think he'll have the discipline once Amorim's gotten into him to come and track back more. And I think Mazraoui is probably going to be the one I would put on the right wing. I think Dalot needs to ride the bench for a good while because he's been absolutely poor. I don't think Antony should touch the squad, and I think Rashford's positions won't be in the wings in this system. Luke Shaw as well. I don't want to hear Shaw again. Shaw needs to go out the door as soon as we can flog him. We need to get him back fit, playing in the under 23s, keep him safe, wrap him in bubble wrap, and then sell him as soon as we can because it's a disgrace, as Arteta would say. All right, let's go centre mid then. Ed, who you got on centre mids? Let's do them as a pair. Who are your two? This has got to be easiest, surely.
Yeah, it's quite easy, right? Kobe Mainoo's injured, right? So it's going to be Casemiro and Ugarte in there. I don't think there's much really need to be said about that. I think Mainoo when he comes back. How long's Mainoo out for? I know he's injured, but
I don't think he'll be back in the first team at the end of the international break. But I think he might be training by then. So he might be. You might have the opportunity to bring him off the bench or something, and he might be in the team before Christmas, I would say. So I think you're right though. I'm going to jump in and put in my centre back pairing before going to John. So I think in the interim it will be Casemiro and Ugarte. And they've looked actually okay under Rude, especially in the last couple of games, albeit against not the greatest opponents. But they've looked all right. But I do agree. I think not because they're the best fits, because I think Kobe might be better suited to a more attacking role in an Amorim system. But I think because of the options we have for this season, Kobe and Ugarte will be the two. I'm pretty sure once he's back from injury. Well, you're going to agree with that, surely, Johns, right? You're not going to throw Eriksen in or someone else.
Yeah, no, I think Ugarte and Casemiro will start, and then Kobe will come in for one of them. I don't know who it will be necessarily.
Okay, so you're opening the door for maybe Ugarte drop. I need to get you guys' opinion on this. Ugarte, what do you think, Ed? Do you think he'll be a good player? Because I have not been moved by him so far.
Yeah, I know Chelsea were linked with him as well, like back in the summer, but we've kind of linked with a lot of players. But it remains to be seen, really. I can't say that I've seen enough from him to say, he's going to nail on and win you the league under Amorim as you guys hope. So, but there's a player there. He looks solid. He gets about, doesn't he? But it's hard to tell. Yeah,
true. Maybe United fans have been a bit harsh on him. Under that back end of Ten Hag's era, he barely touched a pitch, but when he did, my God, it was not looking good. But yeah, let's give him a chance. Amorim is his coach from Sporting as well. Jonty will remember from that Europa League contest that you had a couple of years ago. But all right, let's get into the cams then. Johns, we'll start with you. Who have you gone for the two cams?
I think one of them has to be Bruno, and you've got too many strikers for Rashford to play up front, and I don't think Amorim's going to have the bollocks to say no to Rashford. So I'm going to stick Rashford on the kind of left 10, and then I'll put Bruno on the right 10.
Interesting. Ed, do you agree with that? Do you think you're going to have to squeeze Rashford in there?
I put Rashford on the left because I think that Bruno Fernandes goes into one of those positions, and the other person on my attacking midfield would be Mason Mount. played in a very in a similar system to Thomas Tuchel, with the kind of two 8s or 10s, whatever you want to call them, but two attacking midfielders behind the striker, and Mason Mount in there for Chelsea was great. Won the Champions League, so forth. So
second time you've mentioned that.
Yeah, but no, yeah, I mean that we loved him at Chelsea, and he didn't quite do his business at United yet. But I think that system suits him. He can press high, win the ball high, a lot of energy in there. It kind of sits to his game strength. So, yeah, I'd like to see us Chelsea fans aren't bitter towards our ex-players, so I'd like to see Mason Mount go in there and do his business.
I think that's a good shout. I've seen people do this and talk about who Amorim could play in the cams, and only a handful of people have mentioned Mason Mount. It's almost like they've completely written him off. I think he's definitely, if he can stay fit, I haven't quite got to the Luke Shaw stage with Mason Mount yet. I haven't given up on him in terms of a player. I think he definitely feature, and I think Amorim coming in is probably one of the best things that could happen to him, because now he's not competing with Bruno. He'd hopefully be, playing with him. I think he's going to have a battle on his hands, though, because the player who hasn't been mentioned in this section yet is who I'm going to go with together with Bruno, because I think Bruno is a shoo-in. And I'm going to go with Amad Diallo in the cam, because he's got pace and stuff to play as a winger, but I think what we've seen from the glimpses so far this season is he's actually got decent link-up play, and he connects quite well with the other players around him. And so I think he'll suit better to actually play more central and not have to do the tough ask of running back and forward on the wings. So yeah, I'm going to go with Amad together with Bruno, but I do think that shout, Ed, for Mason Mount is a decent one, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Amad pulled out and Mason Mount to play alongside Bruno. But I would say what Johnson said is my biggest worry. My biggest worry is that the manager comes in and he has to pander to certain players. And I do think there's a chance that he does come in and Marcus Rashford is almost thrusted on him. And, they basically said, you've got to find a place for him. Because I feel like that kind of happened with Ten Hag. And he had to stick by him throughout. And he wasn't courageous enough to drop Rashford enough when he was playing poorly. And I think this is the perfect opportunity for a new manager to come in. I can't see where Rashford fits in this system. So he's going to have to adapt his play, or he's going to, sink or swim, basically. Let's get into centre forward then. I can't imagine this is going to be difficult from some of the performances I've seen from our new signing this summer. I doubt any of you guys are going to go for it, but I'm going to double check. Ed, who have you got centre forward?
Yeah, so it's not going to be the pace merchant. It's going to be Rasmus Højlund. It's going to be in there. Yeah, for me. Again, question marks over whether he's going to be good enough to win the league of United, because I was thinking about them with a title for top 4 charge, whereas obviously Antony raised the bar a little bit and said he needs to be judged on winning the league. So is he enough firepower to do that? I don't know, but from what we're suggesting there, from what we're looking at, it's got to be Højlund, right?
Yeah, I think John, surely you've gone Højlund as well. Don't say you've gone for Xerxes or somewhere else.
No, I think it just makes sense. He's nowhere near Gyökeres level in terms of being clinical, but I think he fits the same kind of mold. So I think not to say that he's going to completely try and replicate his team, because obviously that absolutely flopped when Ten Hag tried to do it. But I think based off of how good he's been with that sporting team, I think if he sees kind of parallels between Man United players and some of his sporting players, I think he's probably going to try and utilise them. So I think it's got to be Rasmus to start with at least. It'll be interesting to see how he's going to use Xerxes and all these other dons that Ten Hag bought for his own system, because this 3-4-3 thing is not that easy to play, and it's your squad is not attacking wise is not the most versatile. You've got a lot of out and out wingers, and then a couple of central players, but it's not as if they can do multiple jobs. So I feel like it's going to be a weird one at the beginning. And I think with Rashford, I think the last comment I'll make on that is I think he's going to have to give Rashford a chance. But I've already heard things about how he really prioritizes intensity. So I think if Rashford might do that thing that he always does, where he like tries to impress the new manager enough to stay in the team, and then after a while just drops off a cliff and just decides he doesn't really care anymore. So he might end up doing that this time. He might show some intensity like he has in the last few games, try and track back a bit more and, you know, do all of that stuff. And then you kind of see maybe some of his other strengths shine through. But if he doesn't perform from the get-go, I think Amorim will drop him out and get somebody else in. I just don't think you can have enough confidence in Mount for him to start in Amorim's system. I think he's going to have to play some of the proven players that have already played this season, that have done something. Even though you've been stinky, he's going to have to choose some of the players that have like got a bit more match fitness and sharpness and so on. So I think he's probably going to try and fit them in first and then see how that goes and swap people out as he needs to.
Yeah, I think you're both right, to be honest. I think the attack is probably going to be the area alongside with maybe midfield, but mostly attack is going to be the area where I think Amorim's going to have to like get in the transfer market and do deals. I don't even, when I talk about raising the bar, Ed, before, I'm not saying that Højlund's going to be that guy, by the way. I actually feel like there's a big chance Xerxes gets flogged if Højlund doesn't raise his levels in this rest of the season. You know, Amorim goes out and looks to buy a striker. That will be his first team striker, and Højlund drops to the bench, right? Like that's totally more. That looks more. That seems more realistic and feels more feasible than Højlund suddenly turning into, you know, Gyökeres overnight. I don't think that's possible. Even though I think there's, you know, he's going to be used to try and imitate that. You know, it doesn't look like there's been no sign yet that Højlund is close to becoming that striker at the moment. So I think there's going to be a major facelift in the attack, and I think we need it to fit his system. And when you talk about intensity, Johns, yeah, I think that's going to be the key factor. But you could be right. Rashford could do the rope-a-dope and start, you know, running a bit more and giving a bit more under the new manager and do enough to stay in the squad. Who knows? But I do think his best shot is going to be a centre forward.
Well, just think about Rashford in his first season with Ten Hag. He was on absolute fire and by far your best player. And then since then has absolutely dropped off a cliff and barely deserves to start for you anymore. So I'm not saying he's going to do it, but there's a chance that he does the rope-a-dope. Yeah.
I mean, that was also with his contract expiring. So I'm going to have to look up whether his contract's expiring next season or this season to work out when Rashford starts playing better again. But yeah, let's see. Anyway, that's enough for this segment.